I made myself a to-do list right here. I have to plant an apple tree, mix soil, plant asparagus, plant strawberries, install drip, direct sow seeds, leaf pull the yard, fix the trellis, harvest veggies, clean bird bath, and refill my hummingbird feeders. And the sun goes down in 4-ish hours or so, so it's definitely very unrealistic. I'm probably only gonna get to about 3 to 4 things, and I'm gonna start off with the least favorite. That way I have something to look forward to. So I'm gonna be mixing up some soil first. Oh, I'm sweating and I haven't even started. I have black containers all over my garden, and now I'm trying to add wood touches. Now this isn't real wood, but it looks like it. If you step far away, squint your eyes and tilt your head. I already drilled my drainage holes, and next I'm gonna fill it up with soil. But I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I don't fill these up all the way with soil when I'm planting vegetables. If I'm planting fruit trees, I do, because I don't want the soil to go down so much over time. But with vegetables, I keep replenishing the containers. I never take away soil. I just keep adding onto it compost and organic matter. So the first thing I'm gonna do is fill this up with some scraps. You know what they say, one man's trash is another man's treasure? Well, this is my trash. But the worms in my soil are gonna love this. This will be their treasure. Whoa. Yeah. Some very smelly scraps. These are yard trimmings from things like Roselle hibiscus and other vegetables, and it smells nasty. They've already started breaking down a little bit though. Look at that, how nasty that looks. Ugh. I like to fill up the containers most of the way with organic matter, but I'm gonna leave about 6 inches from the top, and that's what I'm gonna fill with soil. Now, over time, this is gonna break down, and it's gonna break down pretty fast here in the low desert. So as the soil goes down over time, I'm gonna keep topping it with compost and a few more clippings. Let me move these out of the way because they smell. I'm gonna start off with the base of my soil. No, I don't have any anger issues. Why do you ask? I'm gonna start filling it up with soil. Well, I mean, not soil, this is peat moss. You can also use coconut coir. I always say this, and I know I'm gonna get some comments of people being like, why are you using peat moss? Look, you think if I had the finances, I wouldn't be using coconut coir? Of course I would. But unfortunately, I don't. So until I do, I'm gonna be using this. But one day, baby, I'm gonna be able to buy all the coconut coir my heart could ever desire. Okay, let's grab the gloves again. Oh, Jesus. Next, I'm gonna add some perlite. And where's my compost? Hold on, just a second. Oh, right. And some mushroom compost. Oh, darn it. Okay, let's do it. Oh my God, I'm so exhausted. There we go. I hope you can see why this is not my favorite part, but I do it because soil is not cheap. And I save a lot of money by mixing it myself. I do lose a little bit of my sanity every single time, but I think it's worth it because the less money I spend on soil, the more money I can spend on plants. My goal is to one day make enough money to where I can spend a ton on soil and plants. So I'm just gonna start mixing this up until I come to a good consistency. I'm finally done, and I like the consistency, so I'm gonna bring it over to my container now. So now I'm gonna start filling my container. And then I'm gonna smooth it out again. Now my container is ready to be planted in, but as it so happens, before I plant bare roots, I need to soak them. Honestly, I should have done that from the beginning, but it totally slipped my mind, so I'm gonna soak them now. This is the asparagus I'm planting, and these are the strawberries. So this one is a Mary Washington asparagus, and these are Ozark Beauty strawberries. They're not gonna be planted in the same container. I just wanted to show you both. I've never planted asparagus before, and I probably should have watched a few videos. Oh, but look at the, oh, it's already starting to wake up. Pero que. So look at these roots, and they're alive because they're already starting to break through, which is really cool. Although I will say this one is a little small for my liking, but these two look pretty good. I bought some Ozark Beauty and some Sequoia strawberries. I already planted the Sequoia, but these I'm gonna plant right now. And I wanna show you what I get for $10 and whether they actually look good or not. This broke off of one, but it was already starting to leaf out. And here are the rest of the roots. Oh my gosh, look at those white roots. They're already waking up. And I haven't even planted them. Guys, wait for me, I'm not ready yet. So I'm gonna get them planted today, especially since the days are warming up. Truthfully, right now is not the best time to plant strawberries in the low desert, but we're gonna do it anyways because they were $5 for 10. I paid, I think, $20 to $25 for 10, and none of them survived, so let's try these. I have my watering wand. Oh no, mine is broken. Will it still work? So first I'm gonna set down my asparagus roots. I almost lost the third one because it's so tiny it doesn't even count. Here's what these look like. Look at those roots. They're gorgeous, darling. Gorgeous. I'd say they might even look better than the ones I ordered online. While my roots soak, I'm gonna move this 25-gallon container over to that side of the yard and move another 25-gallon container over to this side of the yard. That way I can plant my apple tree. And I'm replacing it with this one. Okay, cool. This is the bare root tree that I'm gonna be planting today. This is an Anna apple, and I bought it at, give me a second. And I bought it at Tractor Supply for the whopping price of $14.99, $15, baby. So the crown, So this one doesn't say to soak the tree either, but I always do. So first I'm gonna twist this off. I wanna get this planted now because some of my trees are starting to break dormancy, which is insane because winter just arrived like 3 days ago. Let me try not to make a mess, but let me pour this out so we can look at the roots. Oh shoot, I made a mess, didn't I? No, damn it. I found a bucket. Oh. Ooh. So once you shake all of that off, this is what you're left with. I'm gonna soak it for about 20 to 30 minutes, but a bare root tree is gonna come to you naked. It doesn't have any leaves anywhere. It looks like a stick. But that's okay because in a few months it's gonna look like a tree. Personally, I love buying bare root trees. I've never bought bare root trees in store though. I usually order them online and then they arrive in the mail and I plant them. But this is what you can expect. So let me start soaking this. In the meantime, I'm gonna go back to my asparagus. Because my asparagus is already breaking dormancy, I'm not gonna be too worried about it. I have 3 crowns, so I'm gonna make 3 little mounds like this. I could also remove a little bit of the soil, but I know it's gonna settle down, especially after I water it. So I think this is good enough. And then I'm gonna take every single asparagus root and I'm gonna spread it out like this, Kind of reminds me of a spider, a really freaky looking spider. And I'm gonna place it over each little mound that I made. One thing I'm noticing is there's little roots coming out already, little white roots everywhere actually, which means these are starting to wake up. Go on right there. Then I'm gonna take a little bit more soil and I'm gonna top all of them. I'm not sure whether to cover this little part up, so I'm just gonna dust a little bit of soil on top, but not too crazy. Next, I'm gonna add a little bit of mulch on top. I'm gonna be using some shredded wood. Let me see, I don't want splinters. No matter what the material is, it's incredibly important to mulch, especially containers in the low desert, because right now that the weather is nice and cool, it doesn't seem like a big deal. The soil won't dry out quite as fast, but as soon as summer peeks its head around the corner, it turns into hell. Ooh, a radish. Ooh, should I harvest said radish? Or not yet. I'm gonna be planting my apple tree in this container. So the first thing I'm gonna do is make my hole. And in the past, I used mycorrhizae, sprinkled that in there to help with the root development, but I ran out, so we're not gonna be using that. Instead, I'm just gonna be planting my tree. So I'm gonna be looking for the root flare. And the root flare is basically where the trunk starts to get a little bit wider, and it's not this right here. This is actually the graft. So the bottom portion is roots of a different tree, and then the top portion is what's gonna give us the fruit that we want. So the top is what gives us the Anna apple. The bottom is a nobody. It's good for nothing but growing roots. But that's a very important part of planting trees as well, so don't take that for granted. For this tree, I'm probably gonna plant it up to here. I know the roots are coming all the way up here, but I don't want to plant it too deep because the soil will settle over time, and you don't want to bury the root flare because the tree has a ton of roots everywhere, right? But on the very top, you have what are called feeder roots. And if you plant a tree way too deep, what can oftentimes happen is you'll start suffocating the tree. Especially as the soil settles down over time, it just keeps going deeper and deeper. And that's what I did when I first started gardening, and my trees did not thrive. They struggled until I replanted them, and now those things are really taking off. So never plant them too deep. I'm gonna start planting them right here, just as it starts widening up. I'm gonna place my tree right here, and there's really not a whole lot of roots to cover up right now. And then I'm gonna plant it right there. And I'm also gonna stake it up just a little bit because there's not a whole lot of roots going on right now. And we've been having some really strong winds, and I don't want one wind to come over and knock it down. So I'm gonna tie it up and I'm gonna add some mulch. Before I mulch, I'm gonna fertilize the tree just so that when it wakes up, I don't have to come back in a few weeks and do this. Now I can mulch like normal. Now I can add my drip back on. For container trees, I like using a drip line with 6-inch emitters. I buy mine from Drip Depot. And then I use some garden staples to keep it in place. And I coil it around my tree. That way I can water each container slowly but deeply, and I don't have any really dry spots or really wet spots. And usually I put my drip line underneath my mulch, but I didn't this time. It'll be okay. I want to check my list to see how much I've done already because it feels like I've done nothing. I planted my apple tree. I mixed the soil, planted asparagus. Next, I need to plant my strawberries, and I'm gonna install the drip. I might also direct sow some seeds, but I don't know if I'll really get to that today. I know I'm not gonna leaf blow the yard, that's for sure. It's a little too cold. I need to go to the store too. It's too much. I also want to fix my trellis, but I'm missing some supplies for that, so that might have to wait. Harvest veggies, clean bird bath, refill okay, you know what? I have 3 things crossed off right now. The last 2 things I'm gonna do is plant strawberries and install drip. I kind of want to plant the strawberries in a container. I think that would look so cute, but where am I gonna put that container? The thing with strawberries in the low desert is they don't really like it here. The past 2 years, I've tried to plant strawberries and I have been extremely unsuccessful, and that's just because every single year the sun scorches my strawberries. And then whatever strawberries I do get to produce, rodents wind up eating them. I have 10 strawberry plants, so I might plant 5 in a container and 5 in the garden beds. I know in cooler places, strawberries can propagate very easily. They send out runners and then they just take off. You plant like 5 of them and you're left with hundreds. But here in the low desert, all of mine have been scorched by the sun. So I'm not really worried about them spreading all over the place. I don't mind popping some into the garden beds, and I might just do that. Should I do that? Come on, my precious. Oh, 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 oh. When it comes to my strawberries, I'm not very picky about how I plant them because a part of me is always scared that they're gonna die no matter what. This bed looks like it's extremely full, but it's not. It's actually kind of empty. The reason it looks like this is because my eggplant has taken over everything, but I'm gonna prune it back in a few weeks. And in the meantime, I'm gonna pop some strawberries in here. But you don't wanna bury them too deep because strawberries can rot very easily, so you don't wanna bury the crowns. I'm gonna bury them, I think, up to here. Maybe that's a little low, but I'm just scared to bury them too deep. So I just pop them in there, spread the roots out as much as I can, and then I backfill. Now you can't even tell where I planted it because it plants right in. I just finished planting all of the strawberries, and remember how I told you that none of them have ever survived for me? Well, it looks like I was wrong, and I'm so happy to be wrong. I found these little beauties. They made it! They made it! And they've got runners. Look. Wow. Oh, that means so much to me. These are the first strawberry plants that make it through the summer and into the next year. And I mean, look at the runners that they're putting out. Ooh. I think the reason those made it is because they were protected by the canopy of the serrano pepper. There's a few other peppers on the other side, and I think all the foliage has just created the perfect little microclimate for them. So if they've made it through one summer, hopefully they can stay alive until next year, but hopefully we get some strawberries this year. Oh, that gives me hope for all the other ones. Maybe I will stop by Lowe's and pick up a few more. Who knows? But in a few weeks, once it starts heating up, I'm also going to add shade cloth to my structure. That way, my more heat-sensitive plants are able to make it through. The reason I love the beds to be extra full is because I feel like, and now I might be wrong, and this might not apply for everyone, but over the last 2 years, I've worked on building my soil. So making sure that it's full of life. I've mentioned this in the past, but I usually toss in handfuls of worms in there, of red regular worms. That way they can break things down, they can aerate the soil, and then they leave their worm castings, aka their poop, and the plants love that. Over time, my more heat tolerant plants protect the little guys, the ones that don't like the heat. And then in the winter time, the opposite happens, where the more cold loving plants protect the ones that are a little bit more frost sensitive. Anyways, I just wanted to show you that because it makes me feel so happy. I don't think any of my other strawberries survived though, so I don't know if it's time to celebrate yet, but I am very excited and optimistic. It's about time I set up drip for all these containers right here. For this, I use some pruners. These are from Corona. Then I use some drip line with 6-inch emitters. This one I buy from Drip Depot. I find that to be the most cost effective. And then I use some micro tubing. I think that's what this is called. It looks exactly like the drip line with the emitters, except it's completely solid. And then this is what actually waters my plants. And then in here I have my hole punch tool, goof plugs, barbed connectors. Throughout the garden, I have the main line running everywhere, which is a thicker line that the water first comes through. And then I take each of these emitters and hook it up to the main line. I like to coil my drip line around my containers about 3 rounds. That way there's no dry spots. The cool thing about drip line is you don't have to worry about making the lines too short or too long because you can always add or remove. So I attach a little barbed connector, and then I attach these 2 pieces together to turn them into one long piece like this. And then I can start coiling it around my container. Before I place this into my container, I want to make sure that I close up one of the ends using a goof plug like this. So when I put that on there, it seals the end. That way the water doesn't leak out. On the other end, I'm going to attach another barbed connector. Just like this. And then I'm gonna take my micro line, the one that doesn't have any emitters, and I'm gonna run it over to my main line. I have two of them. I have one up here and one down here. The one down here is for my smaller containers, and the one over here is for all of my trees. So that one gets run for more time, this one gets run for less time. So I wanna make sure that my drip line reaches right here. I'm gonna add another barb connector. And then I'm gonna decide where I want to attach it. So in my case, I want it right here. So I take a little punch hole tool, and then I can just attach this in here. So I'm gonna cut it to about right here. And then my drip line already has a barb connector, and then I'm going to connect it with the barb connector on the end. The last thing I have to do is just coil it around everywhere. This is a lot easier to do before I plant things, but I put it off until now. So I'm just gonna use some landscape staples, and then I'm gonna start coiling it around my entire container. And there you have it. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's coiled all around. And now I don't have to worry about hand watering anything. Drip is not that hard. It could just be a little tedious sometimes. So what I personally like to do is pre-cut everything, attach it, and then I can go through and just place it down wherever I need it. I like setting up drip everywhere in my garden because I'm a very forgetful person. All of my drip is above ground. All of my main lines are running everywhere. They're just kind of hidden behind the containers. In my main garden, you can see them a little bit more. But when we first started designing the garden, my husband asked me, do you want me to hire somebody to install irrigation? And I was like, no, of course not. I want to save money, and it's not going to be that many plants. Boy, was I wrong. It's not going to be that many plants. I can hand water it. Plus, it'll give me a reason to go outside. It won't be that big of a deal. Keep in mind, this is before I took over the entire yard, back when I first had 6 main garden beds. And he didn't ask me this just one time. He asked me like 3, 4 plus times, where he was like, before we set down the pavers, do you want me to hire somebody to install irrigation? And every single time I was like, no, of course not. I'm not going to change my mind. Well, I changed my mind very quickly once I started gardening in the summertime. Because when we first designed the garden, I was pregnant. I hadn't gardened yet. I didn't know what summer outside was like. And even then, it was a little bit difficult to keep up with. I think I regretted saying no about 2 weeks after everything was set up, because that's when I started coming out here and hand watering and realizing that the hotter it gets, the quicker the soil dries out, and that means the longer I have to be out here with the hose, and the more miserable I was every single time. So I went through a journey of trying different irrigation setups. For a while, I had PVC set up in the garden beds, and I'd manually hook up the hose, set a timer, and then let that run for, let's say, 2 or 3 minutes. While it worked, I feel like the watering was still a bit more inconsistent, and if I didn't set my timer, which sometimes I forgot, I would overwater a garden bed, or I'd skip a couple because I'd forget which ones I had already gone to. And over time, I got a little bit frustrated with that setup. I needed something that was a little bit more hands-off. Plus, we started traveling a little bit more last year, and every time I attached it to the wrong one. And every time we went out of town, it was such a hassle because I never wanted to leave my garden. I was so scared that my plants would die without me here to take care of them. And what would happen oftentimes is we'd leave, come back, and my garden would still be alive, but a lot of my plants would be barely hanging on. That's when I started looking into setting up drip irrigation, and it was honestly really scary for me at first because I don't know anything about drip. I'm still learning as I go along, and it just seems so intimidating because there's so many names that I don't know, like barb connectors, T connectors, main line, drip line. The vocabulary of everything is just so weird and new. And I think a lot of the times new and weird stuff is scary no matter who you are, no matter what you do. But I kept watching videos and I slowly figured it out. I think the hardest part was figuring out how to set up the timer and the backflow preventer and all of that stuff. That was really what got to me. But everything else has been pretty easy. So if I could go back in time, what I would do different is set up drip from the beginning. And when my husband asked me if I wanted somebody to come in and install irrigation, I would have done it, because I feel like they would have done it underground and I wouldn't have to run the main line all over the place. There are some benefits though to me being able to see the main line, because if I ever need to fix anything or switch anything up, it's easy for me to find all of the main line. But being able to hide it would make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Now I'm gonna go through and just install this everywhere. My back's hurting. But thank you so much for joining me.